Hey, I'm Cody Charnell. Today I wanted to create a video about Gross Rent Multiplier. You'll probably hear me talk about Gross Rent Multiplier all the time. It's a metric that we use when looking at multifamily properties to compare properties to one another. And it's really useful. In single family space, you'll hear metrics like price per square foot thrown around a lot. But in the multifamily space, the value of properties is really derived from the income that they generate. So Gross Rent Multiplier is a metric that compares the price to the rents. So let's get into it. So equation's super simple. It's just, like I mentioned, the price of the property or the value divided by the gross scheduled rents. And so that's all the rent that you'd theoretically collect on a property in a year, and it doesn't count any expenses, which is key. So I like Gross Rent Multiplier better because it doesn't count expenses. When you're just running this equation, it makes it a little faster. But also it eliminates the ability for someone to understate expenses and make a deal look better than it is, either on purpose or by accident. So that's a great thing about Gross Rent Multiplier. Let's do a quick example. So if you had, let's say, $1 million property that generated $100,000 a year in gross scheduled rent, we would say that this is priced at 10 times gross. And another way to think about this is you're paying $10 in purchase price for every $1 of rent that property generates, if we were to turn it back into a fraction. So a lot of people will say, when you're buying an apartment building, you're buying an income stream. And so this is just a multiple of the income stream that you're paying, and that's how they come up with the price. So let's look at another example. So if there was a different property, let's say this one is priced at 1.3 million, and it also generates $100,000 a year in gross scheduled rent, we would say that this is priced at 13 times gross, or you're now paying $13 for every $1 of income that it generates. So as you can see, both of these properties generate $100,000 a year in gross scheduled rents, but one is priced $300,000 higher, and it has a higher gross rent multiplier. So in general, the higher the gross rent multiplier, the less income that you're making relative to the purchase price. So this is great, but it doesn't really mean anything unless we know what the comparables in the market are selling for based on gross rent multiplier. So let's take a look at another example. So this is an example of a property that we might see here in Long Beach. This property is priced at $1 million. And we have two columns here. So in the first column, we're calculating rents, like the current rents. We're adding up current rents. The second column is our pro forma rents. So this property does have some upside that a new owner can capture. So if someone buys the building, they can renovate units and raise rents. So if we were to add up, let's start with the current rents. You can see all of these units are 2 beds. They're priced a little bit differently, so some of these tenants might have been living here a little longer and they haven't had as many rent increases. So total rent for the month is $6,200. Annual gross scheduled income or gross scheduled rent is $74,400. So if we plug that into our gross rent multiplier equation over here, so we're paying $1 million for the property. It generates $74,400, and this is our gross rent multiplier based on current rent, so 13.44 times gross. If we now calculate based on pro forma rent, let's see what this looks like. So we think we can get $2,000 for each of these units. Once they're fixed up, total for the month would be $8,000, and annual gross scheduled rent would be $96,000. So we run our same equation, so $1 million divided by $96,000, and now this property is operating at 10.4 times gross. So really common to see this where property has upside in rents like this. But looking at this, we would still want to know what other properties in this market or in this neighborhood are trading for. So If we knew that properties in this neighborhood were trading for, let's say 12 and a half times gross, based on like stabilized rents, so we could calculate our exit value. So we would do 12.5 is our market, or the market's gross rent multiplier, times 96,000, which is our projected rent, and that would give us an exit value of $1.2 million. So essentially we would be buying this property for $1 million, as you saw up here, and once we invest a little money into it, raise rents, fix it up, we should be able to resell it or refinance it at 12 and a half times gross. So our exit value is 1.2 million. So this is how I would typically use gross rent multiplier when looking at properties. So hopefully that clarifies it a little bit. I'd love to hear your comments, and thanks for watching.